So let's talk about this article that was written by Bloomberg's own Jason Schreier. And it is, and I'll just read the headline: the next video game from BioShock's creator is in development hell. So, I mean, that might be framing it in a certain light, but
Could you call that clickbait?
I clicked on it, so I guess
That's true. Let's give
Yeah,
Jason Schreier a little follow real quick.
Yeah, I want kind of Ben to lead the way because Ben kind of
Yeah.
put this to our attention, and I read through the whole thing, and I think this is something that is worth talking about. So Ben, you can lead the way on this.
So the thrust of the article is after Ken Levine, the studio head and chief creative from Irrational Games, decided to close that studio back in 2014 after the launch of BioShock Infinite and its subsequent DLCs. He spun up a new studio fully owned by Take-Two Interactive, the parent company of Irrational, which was a small cabal of people that he trusted creatively to kind of jam away in a much more limited capacity on a new type of game. The idea ostensibly being that he wanted to be free of some of the constraints of working on a big budget AAA game and the expectations therein. So for the past number of years now, I mean, there's like I said, this was 2014, so now we're in 2022.
Jesus.
Yeah, here we are. So for the past about 7 years, they've been toiling away a team of approximately 30 people, give and take. The team size varies over the years. Has been toiling away on different iterations of this project, and much of the criticism here is directly aimed at Ken Levine. This is very much not an article about like studio culture as a behemoth thing that exists distributed across many people. This is very much pointed directly at Ken Levine and criticizing him, particularly his creative style, his work style, I guess, in that he is very much perfectionist. He is very demanding of the people that work under him, and he is in some ways not particularly open to criticism and pushback from his team. So that's I guess the charitable way of reading this article. And I think if I've left anything out, let me know. But those are the basic beats of the article.
Which he brings up Christopher Nolan in the article as another artier of the arts, because he does praise Ken Levine's like storytelling and artistry in gaming, bringing artistry to games, and that's a very fair thing to point the finger at him with. But bringing up Christopher Nolan does make me think of filmmaking, and like a lot of filmmakers are very perfectionist, and it's not exactly a bad thing to want your final product to look the way you want it to look. I for one think more video games need to have that vision, that direction to head in, because I think a lot of video games I've played over the years, I go, this is all sort of team think, and there's a lot of good ideas floating around, but they get lost in the pudding. I would like more games. I don't want all games to be this way, mind you. I do like some of the more like fluid, expressive games out there, but I do think I would like more games to focus solely on one person's vision and have a team supporting it, bringing it up. So I don't want to lampoon the guy for like wanting to make a good product, his vision.
Yeah. It is, I feel pretty conflicted about this article because I feel like there are some things here that I see as pretty valid. I mean, like the most valid criticism here is this line where one of the AI programmers at Ghost Story, that's Ghost Story is the name of Levine's current studio, says that Levine can become moody and lash out, singling out an individual while berating them in front of their coworkers. That's not that's not a good way to lead a team. That's not good management. That's not good um
But
leadership.
now you might know more about this because he does mention in the article that Ken comes from the world of theater.
Yep.
He worked in drama, and I have a little background in theater, and I know how directors work in the theater space, and they
Yeah.
are horrible people. They are they are so I definitely believe that he is callous. He's
Yeah.
crass. He's yeah.
Yeah,
Um
I have a little bit of exposure too to the theater world, and especially people who are in that space. And there's a moment in the article where Schreier imputes that Ken Levine has a very big and fragile ego. And if you want to talk about people with big fragile egos, you talk about theater directors.
yes, yes you are.
They're chief among them. Um, so I mean, maybe that's part of it. I mean, like I know that Ken Levine had, he started in theater and then he pursued being a screenwriter, and then he kind
Yeah.
of stumbled his way into video games at a pretty late age.
Yeah.
But I think there's a couple things that rub me the wrong way about this article.
What, the hit piece style?
Yeah. Yes.
It's,
So
it's not a
that's the
think
first
piece,
thing.
it's a stink piece.
Yeah. Stink piece style journalism. That's the first thing. And I think frankly, the smaller thing. This has like sassy, caustic nonsense written all over it. It's not, it's, I don't know how to put this in a way that's not dismissive, but it's like, one, the content here is not befitting the type of expose that this is framing itself as. And two, it feels like this is just way too personal for Jason Schreier. He is just
Well,
salivating over every word he types.
There's something about print media recently, or the past like 10 maybe longer years, where the way it's written is in that very matter of fact style. Like I'm looking at Jason Schreier's Twitter, and he does talk like he's right in everything. He's like, "Yep, E3's dead." Um and that's a good thing. You've seen those articles on like clickbait, aggregate sites where they're like, "Oh, you're going to need to eat bugs in 10 years." And that's a good thing. Like this sort of condescending tone that just sort of the whole industry is rife with, and it's unfortunate because I wish there was a more casual tone to talk in, but he's just doing what he needs to do to get clicks.
I think the more egregious thing is that it's this sort of low blow feeling kind of delivery coupled with like, what's the message here? What's the purpose of this?
That's a good
Very
point.
this very targeted article against a single person who apparently can get pissy and call people out from time to time.
Yeah, that is true
That's
because
like and that's the worst thing that they can call, and like can't make up his mind because he's got all the time in the world that doesn't have to make a decision because he created a situation in which his studio could do that, right? Like, so it's like, okay, organizing my thoughts on this before I jump down a rabbit hole and say some things I best
can't
not
come
say.
back from.
Yeah, exactly. So Ken Levine puts down a studio of 300 people at the height of their power, having just released BioShock Infinite, because he knows he's got a problem with making decisions in video
You're good.
games because he's a perfectionist. So he gets 30 people or so that he trusts and gets them into a room and takes forever to work on something. because it's better to take forever to work on something with 30 people than it is to take forever to work on something with 300 people. And that's a big problem. That's not an improvement. So that's the first thing to me. And then the bigger argument, because to answer my own question, the purpose of this is to reopen a tired argument that seems to come around once a year. One of like the 4 arguments we have to have every single fucking year in the games industry. And this is the argument about whether it's okay to talk about specific key creative people as if they are the people who are most responsible for the creation of a game, even though creating games is a collaborative medium. And the way to surmise that is what Taylor said earlier, this auteur theory and whether it applies to games. Auteur theory comes from the film industry. It's something that film critics applied to filmmakers after the fact, right? Like,
yeah. It was a way to describe French New Wave, and and then it was applied to like Hitchcock and Kubrick. Like, oh yeah, they're auteur.
And the idea is like putting these filmmakers who are in a situation in which they're in a collaborative medium, but still act as though they're like the single author of a book. Yeah. The idea is like they make movies the way that an author writes a book themselves, and it's birthed live out of their imagination. Although even that's not totally true, because authors typically have plenty of people who are checking their stuff. So there's this reductionist argument that says it's bad to talk about people like they're auteurs because lots of people work on games and everybody deserves credit, which is true, I guess. but like, really, people, you really think that BioShock would have gotten made without Ken Levine?
Yeah.
Are you fucking joking me?
Like, as much as I appreciate the person who went in the CGI in Black Panther and sculpted his crotch bulge in 3D, as much as I appreciate it, that person didn't really make the movie. Yeah, I appreciate it, but like,
yeah, he worked on the movie, and he worked toward the vision, the crotch vision.
Yeah,
of the director and the people in creative control. There's a term for this in filmmaking that is not present in the games industry at all. The term is above the line work and below the line work. Below the line work is implementation of the vision. This is like grips, lighting people, people who are like doing sets, makeup, this kind of stuff. This is below the line work. It's not to say that it's not important work, but it's not above the line of demarcation. I don't know. I don't actually know what the line is, what that refers to specifically. But everyone above the line is making creative level decisions that drive the work that people below the line.
This is what we were talking about before. This is what I was trying to say is like, some people actually have an impact on the output. And like, it's very hard to say, like, because the people that do the grips on the floor and do all the lines and everything, they have an impact, but like not on the creative vision.
They're not creating the blueprint.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean,
yeah. I mean, that's definitely part of it. And I think like everyone has a certain amount of creative control over their sphere. It's a fact in video games.
Yeah.
And game teams that are run well with people who are responsible with their power can afford a lot of creative responsibility to individual people who are impacting the game in their individual ways. However, if you don't have somebody, whether it's a group of people or whether it's a single person, in this case Ken Levine at Ghost Story, steering the ship, then you will never go anywhere.
Yeah. Which I can respect. I can respect his decision, because it's said in the article you mentioned it earlier. He didn't want to have that sort of feel of making a AAA game. He didn't want that oversight. He wanted to be like independent on his own, but he was still under control of Take-Two, if I'm correct.
Yeah, Ghost Story is owned by Take-Two.
Yeah, and so I can't fault him for not wanting that oversight, because one of the issues with like TV production is if you have an oversight committee or a company in charge and they look down at you, they're like, go, go, go. This is what you're shooting this day. This is what you're shooting next day. And that for those people who quote unquote describe themselves as auteur, like David Lynch or something, they want to sit in that room with their team for 8 hours that day and shoot the same thing over and over again till they feel it's right. That's not a bad thing, but he's set himself up for success by asking for autonomy. And
there's several people like this in the game. Hideo Kojima is one.
Yeah, same thing.
And so was Cory Barlog, I think, was that way with God of War.
Him less so, because that was his first game he
yeah.
directed, right?
But like when he did that press tour, and everyone was giving him praises for that whole game. I mean, because he was the game director. I feel like that really set him apart. Do you remember like seeing all these spoiler casts, and he was all over everything?
Well, after God of War, he directed God of War 2, the original God of War 2, not the new one coming out.
Yeah.
So it was actually his second God of War game that he had directed, and he had worked on the original God of War as an animation director, I think. So he was, intimately familiar with the property, and probably the person who is most tied to God of War as a long running franchise, right? So yeah, I think like if anyone is the auteur behind the God of War series, you could definitely point to Cory Barlog as one of those people, but he's certainly the creative mind behind God of War 2018, no doubt, that this is like.
And Hideo Kojima with Death Stranding. That was his.
Would I be right in saying, though, however, at the same time as all these complaints are levied, that the game industry does a better job crediting people who work on the game than the film industry or the TV industry?
Now, I don't know, because like when you have like a Martin Scorsese movie, like everybody just attributes that Martin Scorsese movie. You know what I mean? Like, I thought the film industry had, Finch, or what'd you say, David Finch earlier?
David Lynch, yeah.
David Lynch. Who was the guy who did Fight Club?
David Fincher.
Fincher.
Yeah. That's it.
Different David.
I think he is also an auteur.
He is. But these people have earned it, though, kind of, right? Don't you? I mean,
in a way, yeah.
So, like this is like, okay. This is one of the annoying things that I think when we have these types of arguments, like nobody actually knows what the hell we're talking. Like we can't agree with what we're talking about. Is auteur a like term of endearment, or is it just something that is used to describe the way a person works?
Yeah.
Right. Because there are plenty of excellent directors in the games industry who are not auteurs.
I think simplifying it to being just director still applies across the board, because you are directing. You don't need to be in complete control, which is why I don't think it's a good thing or a bad thing that he is this way. He just is this way. It's good in this one regard, but if everyone in the game industry acted like this, I'd be like, yeah, there's a toxic problem about that. You can't be in complete control of this, especially since video games take more nuanced work than movies. Ultimately, at the end of the day, there's a lot more committee think that goes into games, I'd say, than a movie.
I think
there's a lot of moving pieces.
I think that it's a term of endearment.
So it's something of an accolade, right? Where it's
that's
like,
I think so.
But
I think in this context it was used negatively, though.
Right.
When Jason Schreier was using it negatively, but
and I think that's the crux of the argument. That's kind of what I'm getting at. Is like, this is what I see as the point of the article. The point of the article is to say that you see what happens when we call a person an auteur, and we like let people think that they are creative geniuses and they can do whatever the hell they want. And it's
okay, yeah. I see. Okay, that was lost to me. I see where you're coming from now.
But like he is, though. He is a creative genius.
Yeah. Well, so this is kind of what I'm saying.
So,
it's like, this is sort of what I'm saying. Is like, I don't know whether it's good or bad that he is this way.
Yeah.
All I know is that it gave us System Shock 2 and
BioShock,
and BioShock Infinite, some of the best games ever made.
Yeah, absolutely.
So do you want amazing games, or do you want people to manage to manage
Pokemon.
their teams exactly the way that you would like them to.
Yeah, it's 100%.
Yeah, no, it is sort of like you do end up with either BioShock or Pokemon, and like one of them is
The
good.
great polls of
No, but I mean, I'm
Yeah.
serious. Like we've talked a lot about how Pokemon is kind
designed
of
by committee and it's
designed by
just
committee, and it's
right.
it's complete soulless. And that's that wanes. I mean, if film directors, if Stanley Kubrick or David Lynch or David Fincher put out a movie every year, if they put out a movie every year of the same quality or varying quality, people would get tired of them. They wouldn't have the same oomph. But like, what's his face? Quentin Tarantino puts out 8 movies in his entire career, and they're all basically masterpieces because he put a lot of care and a lot of work into them. He made them the way he wanted them to be made,
Yep.
and we're better for it. But like,
Does,
you know,
but does that mean that all the people that worked on the Tarantino movies didn't have any say in them, and they didn't get to create them?
hey, you know what? I know a guy who literally pushed snow sleds for the Hateful Eight. He pushed tech on the set around on snow sleds because they shot in a snowy location. He wasn't credited in the credits, but he's still pretty proud to have worked a little bit on the Hateful Eight. He's like, hell yeah.
And he's proud of it because he got to work on a Tarantino movie.
Exactly. So
And-
there's yeah.
So like this is like the snake eating itself kind of thing, where it's
Mhm.
like nobody works at Ghost Story Games except to work with Ken Levine.
Sure.
100%.
Nobody knows what the hell they're making there.
Yeah,
There's no game. There is no reason to work at this 30-person studio except for the fact that Take-Two
Ken
has
Levine's
written-
there. Yeah, the
Well,
reason to work there is because of
Right,
Ken Levine.
because
That's
of Ken
it.
Levine.
That's
yeah,
the
exactly,
only
'cause
reason
he,
to work
'cause
there.
he made BioShock and because he made
Yes.
System Shock 2 and because he's an auteur. And because
Yeah.
if you work on something that Ken Levine is making, that it's going to be boundary pushing and that it's
Yes.
going to be interesting. And that you might toil away for 7 years and get nowhere, but if you stick through with it to the end, it's going to be incredible. It's going to be something that nobody else is doing, right? So this is where it's like, what do we want? What do we want out of this situation? Do we wish that Ken Levine was the perfect manager? Sure. Do we wish that he wouldn't single people out? Do we wish that he would get over his ego a little bit? Sure.
Yeah.
But do I wish that he would get over, like, legitimately? Trying to put myself in the shoes of the people that work with him. Do I wish that he would get over his ego to such a degree that he's no longer able to create things like BioShock?
Hey,
I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think I would.
no, because Stanley Kubrick made a little baby boy cry, and he literally cracked Shelley Duvall's brain in half, and now she's crazy. Like, and I think it was worth it because The Shining was a great movie.
I hear you. I hear that. To that point, like, and the point that I think you're making, which I think is a valid one, is that like there is definitely a line that can be
There's a
crossed.
lot, yeah.
When you're like stepping over the line too much, it doesn't matter how much of a creative genius you are.
You're
like,
right.
I feel that way about, totally unrelated to his work habits on set. I feel that way about God, what's his name? The dude that directed Rosemary's Baby and The Piano.
Roman Polanski.
Roman Polanski, the
Roman
pedophile.
Polanski.
Yeah.
I feel that way about Roman Polanski. It's just like he's such a despicable human as a person that it's hard for me to, even though he's a creative genius and he is, it's hard for me to get over that and enjoy his movies because
I've always been a strong believer in that you should be able to separate the artist from their art. Like a lot of people get on me for still being like a huge Kanye West fan because it's like, oh, he's despicable, he's a bad guy, and I'm like, he makes good stuff. I like it. What are you gonna sue me? I can.
Yeah, I largely like totally agree with you. I think that, but I do, to your earlier point, like there are lines, right?
Yeah.
And there are lines, like if you know a certain amount of horrific abuse is going on during the creation of the thing.
Yes.
That clouds the thing, I think.
Yeah.
Nothing in this article, in my opinion, was worth the writing of the article, let alone us looking down our nose at Ken Levine's creative prowess. Like, he can sometimes become moody and lash out, singling out an individual. Sounds like every boss I've ever worked with.
Yeah, that's
Every
true.
person I've ever met. I mean,
Maybe
Sounds
there's
like
a
every
different-
person I've ever met in their worst
Yes.
moment. You're
Yeah.
right.
Maybe there's a different
right.
problem there. And you know what? You know what, Ben? I'll say it, I'll get canceled for the group. Jason Schreier does look like if Danny DeVito was flattened by a steamroller and someone tried to reinflate him and then put a toupee on him. I'll admit it. We've all
Oh
been
my
thinking
God.
it the entire time.
First off,
Well,
can you all hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Okay, I've been in and out this whole time,
You've been
Try
plagued
to-
with technical difficulties.
plagued with it, but I'm glad y'all can hear me. I've heard maybe like 25% of what you all have said. I pretty much agree. The worst part of the article to me is there's this part of the article that says the waiting game. I don't know if y'all talked about this part.
I don't think so.
Okay, so it says Ken Levine's new project was supposed to be small, but it's taking longer than even some of the biggest video games. And he lists System Shock 2, BioShock Infinite, Halo Infinite, and Red Dead Redemption 2. And it's like a scale. And like one's 5 years to 6 years to 7 years. And then this one's the longest at 7.5. So it's like even Red Dead Redemption 2 with all the staff took less time than this. I'm like, that's such a way to frame that when there's so many video games that get delayed all the time. And would we rather it come out and be incomplete? Like, why even put that? And it's just, and it's towards the end of the article, so it's kind of like compounding everything else.
Well,
But
his
that's when
next
it stuck out
article.
to me.
Well, his next article will be talking about crunch, and why crunch is so bad.
And why we're so bad as the Dukes of Gaming.
That's a great throwaway line in this article where he says that because of this thing that Ken Levine decided to do and set up himself, nobody at the studio crunches because they have unlimited time. They have carte blanche from Take-Two to just be creative.
But that's a
But
bad.
now Jason Schreier
crunches.
But now he's going to go after him because he's not crunching.
Not crunching.
I mean,
You can't win.
No,
You can't win.
See, I remember a point in time, not too long ago in the grand scheme of things, where people were like, "Are video game companies, profitable because there's such a lapse of time between releases, and like how can they make up their money?" I'm like, at very least, he's found a way to continue to make this game while being funded. That's impressive.
Yeah, I mean, like this is the goodwill that BioShock bought him, and this is how he chooses to spend it.
Yeah.
Right. Take-Two is going to give him as much money as he needs to maintain this small studio. They're not going to look too deeply, and they're not going to expect things out of him. They're going to give him whatever he wants and needs because they believe that, and it's in the article, they believe that he's got another franchise. And
it's the same thing.
he did-
Same thing
he's-
Sony did with Hideo Kojima.
Good for him.
Great
For him.
He earned that goodwill, and Sony gave him a blank check and said, "Go make Death Stranding."
And I think it's all that really matters is the final product. If we play the game and we're like, "Oh wow, this long for this," then yeah, maybe we can come back to this discussion and go,
that's a good point.
Yeah,
that's a good point. Yeah, like if we were in the context of Ghost Story finally releasing their game, and Jason Schreier is writing this article about this piece of crap took this long to make because the dude could not make up his mind. It's time to get over our Ken Levine idolization, right?
yeah.
Because he's not bringing home the bacon anymore.
Yeah, that would have been a much better article.
Different. That would be different. I love, Thomas, I'm glad you pointed out this little the waiting game section in the article because my favorite part is it's just like System Shock 2 took 1.5 years, BioShock took 5 years. It's just literally listing how long each
games have taken to make.
Yeah, it's not
There's
even
no nuance in it at all. Like there's
it's not even like it's not even telling you how many days or anything. It's like it doesn't even get very deep.
Yeah,
and then at the very bottom, it's like source data compiled by Bloomberg.
Yeah,
I do love that it's only 0.5 more than Red Dead, because I'm like that's so graphy. You throw a graph up there, anything you can make anything sound bad. That's funny.
Anyway, this is we've probably talked about this much more than this the whole thing is worth. But in summation,
Jason Schreier, we love you. We think you're a great guy. We want you to come on the show. I'd love to give you a big old sloppy wet kiss on the lips. I don't speak to the group. That's just me. So just saying.
Oh man, all right. Well, I'm sorry I missed most of the discussion, but there's a lot that need to be said about it. So glad Ben led the way with that.